For more than half a century, one man carried a secret so devastating it could never be spoken, until now. Jackie Kennedy's bodyguard, sworn to silence and loyalty, has finally broken that vow. What he witnessed behind the polished smiles and public grace tells a far darker story of heartbreak and fear. And once you hear what Jackie was hiding, history will never look the same again. In late 1960, following John F. Kennedy's historic election victory, U.S. Secret Service agent Clint Hill received orders that would quietly reshape the course of his life. He was transferred from the Denver field office to Washington, D.C., and assigned to protect Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, the poised, soft-spoken wife of the president-elect. To Hill, a young and ambitious agent, the assignment initially felt like a setback. Protecting the president seemed the pinnacle of Secret Service duty, while guarding a First Lady-to-be appeared, at least on paper, to offer little excitement or challenge. Hill soon learned how wrong that assumption was. Jacqueline Kennedy was not a ceremonial figure, content to remain behind palace walls. Intelligent, fiercely independent, and deeply private, she lived an active life that demanded constant vigilance. She traveled frequently, moved through crowds with ease, and insisted on maintaining a sense of normalcy despite the intense public scrutiny surrounding the new administration. Her determination to live freely meant that Hill's role required sharp instincts, adaptability, and absolute discretion. As Kennedy's inauguration approached in January 1961, Hill found himself at the center of a rapidly accelerating political and social whirlwind. The Kennedys symbolized youth, glamour, and change, and Jackie quickly became an international-style icon. Every public appearance, from campaign stops to official ceremonies, drew enormous attention. Hill had to balance close protection with her desire for personal space, earning her trust while remaining constantly alert to potential threats. Over time, Hill's perspective shifted dramatically. What he had once viewed as a dull posting evolved into one of the most demanding assignments of his career. Protecting Jacqueline Kennedy meant understanding her routines, anticipating her movements, and quietly absorbing the emotional weight of guarding someone who carried both personal vulnerability and enormous symbolic importance. By the time John F. Kennedy took office, Hill no longer saw his role as a demotion, but as a profound responsibility, one that would bind his fate to the Kennedy family in ways he could never have imagined. From 1961 through 1963, Clint Hill remained constantly at Jacqueline Kennedy's side as her life as First Lady unfolded on the world stage. What began as a professional assignment gradually evolved into a relationship defined by trust, loyalty, and unspoken understanding. Jackie's schedule was relentless. She traveled extensively, representing the United States with grace and intellect, and Hill accompanied her across continents, through cheering crowds and private corridors alike. During high-profile state visits to France and India, Hill witnessed firsthand the extraordinary effect Jackie had on foreign leaders and the public. In Paris, her fluency in French and appreciation for history and art captivated audiences and famously drew admiration that at times rivaled the president's own. In India, her genuine curiosity about local culture and her respectful engagement with tradition left a lasting impression. For Hill, these trips demanded intense concentration, but they also offered glimpses of the woman behind the carefully curated public image. Away from cameras, Jackie revealed a lighter, more human side. During quieter moments on family retreats in Palm Beach or drives through the Virginia countryside, Hill observed her sharp wit and understated humor. She enjoyed casual conversation, shared observations about books, architecture, and paintings, and occasionally laughed at the absurdity of her own celebrity. These moments stood in stark contrast to the elegant, almost untouchable figure portrayed in the press. Hill came to understand that Jackie Kennedy carried enormous pressures, expectations of perfection, constant scrutiny, and the responsibility of shaping America's cultural identity. yet she navigated these burdens with resilience and intelligence. For Hill, protecting her became more than a matter of physical security. It was also about safeguarding her privacy and dignity. Over time, the bond between agent and First Lady deepened, forged not through dramatic incidents, but through shared travel, long hours, and countless quiet exchanges that revealed a complex, spirited woman living inside a carefully guarded public role. In August 1963, Clint Hill found himself drawn into one of the most painful chapters of Jacqueline Kennedy's life. During her pregnancy with her third child, Jackie had retreated from public view, seeking rest and privacy as her due date approached. When complications arose and she was rushed to Otis Air Force Base Hospital in Massachusetts on August 7, 1963, Hill responded immediately, even though he was officially off duty. Instinct and loyalty compelled him to be there. As Jackie went into premature labor, Hill paced anxiously outside the delivery room, fully aware that the situation was grave. The baby, Patrick Bouvier Kennedy, was born weeks early and immediately struggled to breathe. Doctors diagnosed severe respiratory distress caused by underdeveloped lungs, a condition that medical science at the time could do little to treat. Hill watched helplessly as the first family's joy turned to fear within hours of the birth. Understanding the seriousness of the infant's condition, Hill took on responsibilities that went far beyond standard protective duty. He quietly arranged for a Catholic priest to come to the hospital so Patrick could be baptized, ensuring that Jackie and President Kennedy's religious wishes were honored. The act reflected Hill's deep sensitivity to the family's emotional needs during an unimaginably fragile moment. Patrick was transferred to Boston Children's Hospital, where specialists hoped experimental treatments might save him. Hill remained close, coordinating security while absorbing the growing sense of inevitability. After just 2 days, on August 9, 1963, baby Patrick died from lung complications. The loss devastated Jackie Kennedy, compounding the emotional strain she had endured throughout her public life. For Hill, witnessing this private tragedy left a lasting mark. He saw firsthand Jackie's quiet grief, dignified, restrained, and profound. The experience deepened his protective instinct toward her, transforming his role from guardian to silent witness of her deepest sorrow, and reinforcing a bond shaped not by ceremony or travel, but by shared heartbreak. On November 22, 1963, Clint Hill's life, and the nation's, was irrevocably changed. As the presidential motorcade wound through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Hill was assigned to the follow-up car behind the President and First Lady. Moments after the limousine passed the Texas School Book Depository, the sharp crack of gunfire shattered the celebratory atmosphere. Within seconds, President John F. Kennedy had been mortally wounded. Reacting on instinct, Hill sprinted toward the presidential limousine. In the now famous footage captured by bystander Abraham Zapruder, Hill is seen leaping onto the back of the moving car, throwing his body forward in a desperate attempt to shield Jacqueline Kennedy and the stricken president from further harm. It was a reflex born of training and devotion, but one that arrived tragically too late. Inside the limousine, chaos and disbelief reigned. Hill later recalled the horrifying scene in vivid detail. Jackie, dazed and in shock, had climbed partially onto the trunk of the car. At the time, Hill believed she was reaching for a fragment of the president's skull that had been blown away by the fatal shot. He gently but urgently guided her back into the seat, shielding her as the driver accelerated toward Parkland Memorial Hospital. The physical reality of the moment left an indelible scar on Hill's memory. Blood filled the back seat, and the president's grievously injured head rested against Jackie as she cradled him, whispering to him despite the hopelessness of the situation. Hill positioned himself over the couple, scanning for additional threats while grappling with the unimaginable fact that the man he was sworn to protect was dying inches away. In the aftermath, Hill remained with Jackie through the frantic ride to the hospital and the devastating confirmation of the president's death. Though praised for his bravery, Hill would later carry profound guilt, haunted by the belief that he should have acted faster. The sights, sounds, and helplessness of that day followed him for decades, replaying endlessly in his mind as the defining trauma of his career and his life. In the chaotic hours following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, Clint Hill remained at Jacqueline Kennedy's side as she endured a level of shock and grief few could comprehend. Inside Parkland Memorial Hospital, as doctors fought briefly and unsuccessfully to save the president, Hill witnessed Jackie's composure harden into something almost otherworldly. She was blood-stained, silent, and unwavering, her pink suit soaked with the visible evidence of violence that had just altered history. When aides gently suggested that she change her clothes, Jackie refused. She insisted on remaining exactly as she was, later explaining that she wanted the world to see what had been done to her husband. To Hill, this decision reflected not hysteria, but a fierce and deliberate resolve. In the midst of overwhelming loss, Jackie was already shaping how the moment would be remembered, anchoring truth to memory through her own physical presence. Hill worked quietly to protect her privacy, shielding her from unnecessary intrusion, as officials, doctors, and agents moved frantically around them. He stayed close as Jackie stood beside the president's body, refusing to leave him even after his death was officially pronounced. Her grief was profound but restrained, expressed not through tears or collapse, but through stillness and loyalty. Later that afternoon, Hill accompanied Jackie onto Air Force One for the return flight to Washington, D.C. The cabin was heavy with disbelief as Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as president just feet away. Jackie remained seated, still wearing the blood-stained suit, her face pale and distant. In one of the most revealing moments Hill ever recalled, she turned her concern away from herself and quietly asked what might happen to him, whether he would be blamed or punished for failing to save her husband. The question stunned Hill. Even in the depths of her own devastation, Jackie Kennedy was thinking of others. For Hill, this moment crystallized her character, dignified under unimaginable pressure, selfless in grief, and determined to bear her sorrow without spectacle. It was a final, haunting testament to the stoicism that defined her in the darkest hours of her life. In the months following President Kennedy's assassination, Clint Hill continued his duties with outward professionalism, remaining assigned to protect Jacqueline Kennedy and her children through the early part of 1964 and the emotionally charged period surrounding the next presidential election. To the public, Hill appeared composed and dependable, a steady presence beside a grieving former First Lady. Privately, however, he was unraveling. The events of November 22nd replayed relentlessly in his mind. Hill became consumed by the belief that he had failed in the most fundamental duty of his career. Despite acting within seconds, despite risking his life, he could not escape the conviction that he should have moved faster, that if he had reacted a fraction of a second sooner, the outcome might have been different. This sense of responsibility hardened into survivor's guilt, a psychological burden that deepened rather than faded with time. While continuing to guard Jackie and her children, Hill struggled with insomnia, intrusive memories, and emotional numbness. He later admitted that the trauma followed him everywhere, even into moments of silence. Public praise for his bravery only intensified his inner conflict. Accolades felt hollow against the reality of the loss he had witnessed and internalized. In interviews and reflections later in life, Hill spoke candidly about the depth of his despair during this period. The guilt became so overwhelming that he fell into a severe depression, one that led him to contemplate suicide. Though he never acted on those thoughts, the crisis marked a turning point, revealing the hidden cost of a career spent at the edge of catastrophe. Hill eventually left the Secret Service, but the trauma did not remain behind with the badge. For decades afterward, the memories haunted him, shaping his mental health and his understanding of duty, loss, and responsibility. Decades after leaving the Secret Service, Clint Hill made the difficult decision to speak publicly about the years he spent protecting Jacqueline Kennedy. For much of his life, he had guarded those memories in silence, bound by loyalty, discretion, and lingering pain. Eventually, however, Hill came to believe that the full truth of Jackie's character, beyond photographs, fashion, and myth, deserved to be preserved. This conviction led him to write memoirs such as Mrs. Kennedy and Me and My Travels with Mrs. Kennedy. In these books, Hill revealed a deeply human side of Jackie Kennedy that few had ever seen. He described her quick, intelligent wit, often delivered with dry humor and impeccable timing. Away from public appearances, she could be playful and self-aware, gently mocking her own celebrity and the rigid expectations placed upon her. Hill recounted moments when she laughed easily, told stories, and found amusement in small, ordinary details that contrasted sharply with her regal public image. Hill also emphasized Jackie's profound love of beauty and culture. She spoke passionately about architecture, history, literature, and art, using those interests as both intellectual nourishment and emotional refuge. For her, beauty was not vanity, but a form of resilience, a way to impose meaning and order on a world that had repeatedly tested her with loss. Perhaps most powerfully, Hill wrote about how Jackie balanced public duty with private grief. He portrayed a woman who carried sorrow quietly, refusing to let it define her or overwhelm her sense of purpose. Rather than retreat from life, she engaged with it more deliberately, shaping her surroundings and her legacy with intention. These reflections transformed public understanding of Jacqueline Kennedy. Through Hill's careful, respectful storytelling, the First Lady emerged not as a distant icon, but as a complex individual, intelligent, humorous, wounded, and strong. His memoirs offered the world a rare gift, a portrait drawn not by historians or headlines, but by the man who stood closest to her in both triumph and tragedy. After the assassination of President Kennedy, Clint Hill continued his service with the U.S. Secret Service, going on to protect other presidents and their families during a period of intense political and social upheaval. Though his career advanced and his professionalism remained unquestioned, the events of November 22, 1963, never loosened their grip on him. When Hill retired in 1975, he left behind decades of service, but not the psychological weight that had quietly shaped his life ever since Dallas. In the years that followed, Hill became increasingly open about the personal cost of his career. In interviews late in life, he admitted that he carried the assassination with him every single day. The images returned uninvited: the sound of gunfire, the sight of Jackie Kennedy climbing onto the trunk, the blood-filled back seat of the limousine. He confessed that he repeatedly replayed those seconds in his mind, convinced that if he had moved faster or positioned himself differently, the outcome might have changed. This self-questioning endured despite widespread recognition of his bravery. To the public, Hill was the agent who leapt onto the presidential limousine, a symbol of courage in the face of chaos. To himself, he remained the man who had not been able to save the president. That internal conflict defined much of his later life, revealing the profound divide between public honor and private anguish. Yet Hill's legacy is not solely one of guilt or regret. His reflections underscored a deeper truth about duty and sacrifice. He remained devoted to the ideals of service, never minimizing the responsibility he had accepted when he joined the Secret Service. His willingness to speak candidly about trauma helped illuminate the emotional toll borne by those tasked with protecting others at history's most dangerous intersections. What do you think about these revelations? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.